I told myself it was nothing. Just a glance, a fleeting accidental meeting of eyes in a quiet house. But when I walked past him that morning wearing something I shouldn't have, his gaze followed me, slow and deliberate. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper, something I felt in the air between us like an unspoken challenge. And for the first time in years, I didn't know if I wanted to step back or step closer. It was a Sunday morning, the kind of quiet day I used to enjoy with James. The house was still, filled only with the faint sound of birds outside. Ethan had been staying with me for a few weeks now, filling the space James had left behind in ways I hadn't expected. I thought it would be temporary, just until he figured out his next steps after grad school. But even in such a short time, his presence had changed the house. He brought life back into the empty rooms, and, if I was honest with myself, he brought something else back into me too, a spark I thought had faded forever. That morning, I hadn't thought much about what I was wearing, a silk robe James had bought me years ago. The kind that clung to the skin in soft waves. It wasn't revealing, not exactly, but it felt more intimate than anything I usually wore around the house. I wasn't expecting to see Ethan so early. As I walked out of my room with a cup of tea in hand, there he was, leaning against the wall at the end of the hallway, barefoot, mug in hand. His faint smile froze the moment I stepped into view. His gaze drifted over me, lingering just a second too long before meeting mine. "Morning," he said, his voice casual, but his eyes gave him away. "Good morning," I replied quickly, clutching the tea like a lifeline and moving past him. I could feel his gaze follow me all the way to the kitchen. My heart pounded in a way I couldn't explain. My body felt hyper-aware of that brief encounter. It was nothing, I told myself again. Just a look. But that look stayed with me all day. Ethan had always been polite and reserved. Nothing like his father James, who was brash, charming, and knew how to command a room. Ethan was quieter, more thoughtful, the kind of person who listened before he spoke. It had taken years for him to warm up to me after James and I married. By the time he left for college, we had a comfortable but distant understanding. But the man who returned after James's death wasn't the same boy who had left. Ethan had grown into himself, confident, self-assured, with broad shoulders, a sharp jawline, and eyes that crinkled when he smiled. His presence filled the house in a quiet but undeniable way. He made me feel seen again. I tried to shake it off as the day went on. I cleaned the kitchen twice, reorganized the pantry, and spent hours in the garden pulling weeds. But no matter how busy I kept myself, thoughts of Ethan lingered. That evening, we sat down for dinner together, a habit we had fallen into. The conversation was light, but I noticed how his eyes lingered on me when I spoke. "You've been busy today," he said casually, leaning back in his chair. I shrugged. "Just trying to stay productive." His lips quirked into a small smile. "You don't always have to keep yourself busy, you know." His sincere, gentle tone left me speechless. I changed the subject quickly, but his words stayed with me long after dinner. That night in bed, I couldn't stop replaying the hallway moment, the intensity of his gaze that made me feel both vulnerable and alive. The days that followed became a careful dance. I told myself to keep my distance and maintain the boundaries, but Ethan's presence was magnetic. He started joining me in the garden, helping with weeds and hedges. One afternoon, as I knelt in the dirt tugging at a stubborn root, he crouched beside me. His hand brushed against mine, rougher than I expected. "Here, let me," he said softly. When he looked up, smiling faintly, I felt a strange flutter in my chest. We held that gaze longer than we should have under the golden sunlight. Evenings brought more quiet moments. During a rainy night, we sat in the living room, me with tea, him with a book. He suddenly asked why the house felt so quiet and overwhelming for me. "You deserve to feel alive again," he said. His sincerity hit me hard. I brushed it off and left the room, but his words echoed in my mind. Tension built slowly. Late one night, I found him in the living room and confessed I had been thinking about James. He listened, then knelt in front of my chair, taking my hand. "Tell me I'm not imagining this," he whispered. The air felt charged. I admitted my confusion. And in that vulnerable moment, something shifted between us. The next day I avoided him, but the pull was too strong. In the study, he cornered me gently against the bookshelf. "Just tell me you don't feel the same, and I'll walk away." I couldn't say it. Instead, I reached for him. That evening, as rain pounded outside, our walls finally came down. We shared a tentative kiss that deepened with years of hidden longing. Our movements were slow and deliberate as we explored emotions we had both been afraid to acknowledge. We made our way to the bedroom, where Ethan paused at the doorway. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. The next moments unfolded with tenderness that took my breath away. His touch was reverent, his movements careful. I surrendered to the connection, physical and deeply emotional, like we were both rediscovering something we had lost. When the storm passed and morning light filtered through the curtains, I lay wrapped in his arms, listening to his steady breathing. The house no longer felt like a tomb of memories. The heavy loneliness that had clung to me for so long began to lift, replaced by a quiet, tentative hope. We didn't rush into heavy conversations. There were soft kisses, gentle touches, and quiet understanding. "I've wanted this longer than I should admit," Ethan whispered, tracing patterns on my skin. I smiled despite the whirlwind inside me. "So have I, but we have to be careful. This changes everything." He nodded with quiet resolve. "I know. The world might not understand, but I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure it out together, one day at a time." In the days and weeks that followed, our secret became a gentle new rhythm in the house. Stolen glances across the breakfast table turned into lingering touches when no one was watching. Late-night talks on the couch often ended in warm embraces. The garden we once tended separately now became a place we worked in together, laughing over small things. Friends and family commented that I seemed brighter, more alive. I told them I was finally healing, which, in a way, was true. Guilt still visited in quiet moments, especially when old photos of James appeared or memories surfaced unexpectedly. But alongside the guilt grew something stronger: joy, connection, and a renewed sense of purpose. Ethan brought energy, thoughtfulness, and love back into my life. What started as a forbidden glance in a silk robe had blossomed into a complicated but beautiful chapter. Looking back, that morning wasn't a mistake, it was a turning point. The house that once echoed with emptiness now carried laughter, warmth, and possibility. We don't know how long we can keep our secret or what challenges the future will bring, but for the first time in years, I'm not facing life alone. Together, we're writing a new story, one that's messy, passionate, healing, and uniquely ours. And in the quiet moments, when his hand finds mine, I let myself believe that love, even when unexpected, can be worth every risk.